The digital transition. The Digital Transition, a podcast series created to assist those tasked with implementing digital strategies, where we will share our knowledge and experiences to support you in your transition. Welcome to The Digital Transition. I'm your host, Nathan Hildebrandt, and today I'm talking with Alice Leung from Brick and Mortar Ventures about the future of digital and technology that she's seeing currently in its infancy. But before I talk to Alice, I need to talk to you about our exclusive podcast sponsor, NBS. NBS Chorus is revolutionising construction specification with cloud-based collaboration. Now it integrates seamlessly with your building model, allowing you to increase productivity and reduce risk. So NBS Chorus allows you to specify your project in Uniclass 2015, which is recommended by the Queensland Government BIM Data and Information Guidelines, as well as the Victorian Digital Asset Strategy Guidelines, and mandated by Transport for New South Wales. So to learn more about NBS, head to their website www.thenbs.com.au. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, Alice.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Now, firstly, Alice, for the listeners that I have that are not aware of who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. I'm Alice Leung, and my background is actually in construction operations and project management. So I used to work for DPR Construction, one of the large commercial general contractors based out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Started my career out on the construction sites as a project engineer, and really fell in love with the problem-solving aspect of construction. And early in my career, I was really fortunate that I got pulled into helping with the BIM stuff. So being a young person joining construction for the first time, and really liked computers and all the cool tech, I got to really work really closely with the BIM team, and that kind of led me to working closely with the innovation group and helping evaluate and implement new tech. So I've worked on hospitals and data centers in the San Francisco Bay Area and in Singapore, and throughout my career worked really closely with a lot of the construction technology startups, and that's kind of really what led me to my career now in venture capital, working at Brick and Mortar Ventures, investing in early stage construction tech startups.
Now, one thing you did miss off your small CV there, and that's the one thing I love about all the guests, is that we have the guests all bring an extensive amount of knowledge and experience from their careers. You're also a committee member of Built North America, which is part of the DBI Institute. So you forgot that part, but you also contribute to putting those events together as a volunteer as well. And that's how we know each other, through our cross-pollination across the different conferences and the Built conferences around the world. But most people, and I don't know, maybe there's a lot of smart people out there that listen to this podcast that understands venture capitalism, something that, you're out there going and trying to find funding. Can you explain to the listeners who Brick and Mortar Ventures is? So first of all, who it is, what it is as a company, and then can you share the role that you play as an organisation within industry?
Yeah, for sure. And I always forget to mention DBEI because I see it more as fun rather than work.
Well, it's business mixed with pleasure, right? And the whole thing is if we enjoy what we're doing, it doesn't seem like work, and that's exactly what those events are all about.
Exactly. But thanks for bringing that up. So yeah, a little bit on Brick and Mortar Ventures. So we are oftentimes coined the construction tech investor, just given a lot of our group's past investments have included PlanGrid, Building Connected, FieldWire, and a whole bunch more. But really what we do is we invest in the built world, and particularly the construction process within that built world. So for us, how we define the construction process is, that process starts with design, goes through pre-construction, construction, handover, commissioning, and operations and maintenance. we're investing in technologies that make the construction and maintenance of assets a lot more efficient. So I know that there's probably architects listening that are like, oh, what, design is part of construction? That's just kind of how we, define where we invest. So we invest across all the different market verticals. So we don't only invest in technologies for single family residential and commercial real estate, but we also invest in technologies for oil and gas, mining, civil infrastructure. And we have this idea that a lot of the processes are pretty similar across all of these different types of construction. So we invest in early stage construction technology startups. I'm just going to make it easy by calling it construction technology startups. We invest in the seed and Series A stages. And I think the interesting thing about our fund is that if you look at the makeup of the team members, we all have a ton of operations experience, and 4 out of the 5 of us have worked in industry before as architects, engineers on the construction side. And all of the initial investors in our fund are actually from the construction value chain. So you can kind of think of us as a by construction for construction fund. And we work really closely with all of the entrepreneurs, whether or not, they're investing now or investing in the future. And we want to be that support system for anyone who wants to start a company for the AECO space. So yeah, we're very collaborative. We also work with a lot of large companies in industry that are interested in learning about or collaborating with some of these early stage startups. So we really want to be that glue between, the technology side, the investing side, as well as the practitioner side.
One thing you touched on is that you're focusing on the construction side operations. It's because there's that much opportunity in each of those compartments, I guess. Maybe there needs to be a sister company or someone else to come in, and if the architects are really interested, they can go and jump on that side of the fence and start up another venture capital company. But this is a really interesting kind of a tipping point in terms of what was the decision behind, or one of the main reasons why you decided to leave, on-site construction project management type role to join venture capital firm. So what drove that decision to make that massive step?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for a while now, probably not that experienced, but just during my time in construction, because I was out on the construction sites, I saw a lot of the inefficiencies. And I've always been the type of person that I think I'm just impatient. Like I don't know if I'm lazy. I think I'm impatient. And, when things don't go quickly, I just get really frustrated. I'm like, oh, there's got to be a better way, or there's got to be some type of technology that we can use. And I think, a lot of people, probably you and a lot of people listening to this podcast, feel the same way. A lot of the folks at DBEI are definitely, and those who attend the built events is, just frustrated with how slow, people have been adopting new technology, frustrated with some of the technology that we're kind of forced into using. And construction or the AEC space is, traditionally very service-based. A lot of the technology companies that we've seen probably until just the last 5 years or so have been bootstrapped, and they've just been people frustrated with issues building technologies and selling to industry because they were just, so frustrated with that one thing that they built a business out of it. And I think just given how construction was changing and the ability to bring tablets and smartphones out onto the construction site, that actually made technology a little bit more scalable in some sense, to not just, folks working on the computers, and, it wasn't just BIM tools being created for the industry. So I kind of saw that during my time in construction, that there were a lot of people just building new apps for the field, or for the construction teams. And yeah, I kind of saw that growth, and it also got to a point in my career where I was, at a point where I'm like, oh man, things are changing so slowly. I've been on so many projects, and, every project is so different that, the last project that I was working on was less innovative than the first project that I ever worked on. And, that kind of just blew my mind how slow construction was changing. And that was when I decided that I wanted to do something that had a bigger impact on industry. And I got this opportunity to join Brick and Mortar Ventures, where now I get to work with a lot of industry professionals and I get to work with a lot of different technology companies in the hopes to kind of bridge a lot of those connections and invest in the companies that can really change the way that we build.
No, it aligns with a lot of the reasons why we choose to move on through frustration and procrastination with the people that we have to deal with. It's time to move on. I can't cope with this anymore. Now, I have an idea. Let's talk through a scenario. I have an idea, and I'm sitting here in my my office right now, and the problem is that I may have an idea, but it's very difficult to get an idea off the ground because you might not know the right people. You may not have the skill sets, but you have this vision about how you're going to change the world. But how important do you find venture capital in terms of its role? And we'll look at it from the perspective for construction and operation for today, rather than every facet. But how important is your role as a venture capital firm in helping people with great ideas, people that are looking to develop software, people are looking to develop technology? Why is it so important that you exist as a role? I guess, why is it that you exist, and how is it so hard for people to just take an idea and make it real without people like yourself?
I would like to think that we're very important.
No, well, but yeah.
So I would like to think we're very important and integral to the, I guess the innovation and the digitization of construction. But I think, frankly, when I break it down, and we have a lot of these discussions within my own team, is to understand, what is a company that makes sense for venture capital? So I think that's also something that's a little misconstrued to a lot of the, just people around the world. They kind of think, oh, you can go to Silicon Valley, you could raise a ton of money and just like fail as many times as you want, or you could do all this stuff. And I think, from the outside perspective, it's very different from what it really is, right? And, when we look at AEC specifically, there are a lot of companies that actually don't make sense to raise venture capital. So the profile of a type of company that should raise venture capital is one that is really, really risky. So a lot of the times it's so risky that banks won't lend you money. And that's why you're trading away part of your company for that capital. So you're selling equity of your company for capital. So yeah, a lot of the times it's a really, really risky business. It's probably something that has never been done before. And because of that, people don't know if it's going to work or not. Like, I think the stat is 9 out of 10 venture-backed startups will end up failing. So it's not an easy path. It is a path, but it is for very specific types of companies. And I think for us specifically, some of the examples of companies that we would be that have taken venture dollars that I think have made a big change on industry are the robotics companies, or some of the ones that are developing new methods of construction that would otherwise be way too risky for someone like you, a sole proprietor, to basically take on the risk to develop something that's super complex, right? I think for a lot of the software, the early stages can be kind of bootstrapped, or you can kind of do some type of development to get to a certain traction. And once you've decided that, okay, like we're actually going to turn this into a way bigger bet, then that might be when that company turns into more of a venture backable business. So yeah, when we look at companies, it's always like, we're in the job to underwrite risk, and it's very risky bets. So we've invested in a whole bunch of different types of business models, some hardware, some robotics, some pure software. Some are more marketplace plays. As an example, we invested in Curbio. That's a pre-sale home renovation marketplace, but they do, they have contractors underneath, that they've hired within the company. But the unique business model that they're going after, kind of made them a venture backable business.
Now, another example of that, which might be kind of a, reality TV-esque kind of approach for people, would be Dragon's Den. in terms of crazy people walking in with their inventions and trying to get capital from, very rich people. I don't know if they have Dragon's Den in North America. Do they have a similar program over there?
I think it's Shark Tank.
Shark Tank, yeah. Well, that's another one, yeah. Shark Tank.
But
they
I
have
like
both.
Dragon's Den more.
But for the listeners out there that have ideas, that's the kind of concept, and you see how many of those ideas typically get shot down, even though they have been filtered for the show. It just demonstrates that how hard it is to pick the winner, I guess you could say, or the ones that people can relate to or see a benefit in the long term, and actually a marketable or a business that's actually worth backing. Now, we've covered off, I guess, on the kind of higher level stuff in our introduction, I guess you could say. But what I wanted to touch on now is a couple and go into a bit more detail about some of the actual technologies or hardware, I guess you guys have assisted and backed. Now, the first one I wanted to talk to you about, you talked a lot about robotics, and robotics have obviously a number of different ways in which it can benefit construction through speed, accuracy, safety, etc. Do you want to talk to the listeners a little bit about Canvas and what Canvas is, and the approach, how that's going?
Yeah. So Canvas is one of our portfolio companies that's a drywall finishing robot. So they actually came out of a robotics lab. And when we talked to them, they were, just trying to figure out what is that big market that they can go after. And, from multiple conversations, Canvas decided that, hey, drywall is actually a huge market, and it's also very inefficient. And it's a lot of the times on the critical path. So I think that was probably one of the reasons why we invested in Canvas is they've developed a technology that can decrease the drywall finishing time from 7 days down to like 2 to 3 days, depending on, how fast you can get the mud. It's called mud here in the US. I don't know if it's called the same in Australia, but how fast you can get the mud to dry. So that is an overall huge schedule savings, and it's a fundamental change in the way that we're finishing drywall. And through that process, you can actually achieve greater than a level 5 finish, which I know a lot of architects will probably like, because I've walked down hallways where it's level 5, but you can still kind of see the seams in between the sheetrock. So yeah, Canvas, they're starting with one very particular use case. There's definitely an opportunity for Canvas to do other things such as, painting walls or finishing concrete. But the initial use case of drywall finishing was already a large enough market. And today their business model has been being the drywall finishing subcontractor. So they've worked as a sub out on the construction sites to get that feedback loop into continuously making their robots better. But in the future, what they want to do is start leasing out some of their machines to, different contractors and potentially even start selling them. So that's a little further down the roadmap. But yeah, they're definitely changing, from a scheduling perspective, they're helping a lot of the contractors save time and kind of even get off of the critical path if they end up being on it.
No, it's as an architect, I hate the quality of and you don't normally see the plastering quality or lack of quality until after it's been painted. As we all know, it's the painting and the finished light fixtures that then shine onto the poor plastered joints, and you just go to yourself, oh please. And then there's I don't know if it's the same over in the US, but we walk around as architects with little coloured dots to mark defects and see walls with dots all over them. And if that can change that and make the life of I can imagine painters saying, I want to work with a robot plasterer instead of a normal plasterer. It might be an interesting change. Now, one of the things that we are facing here in Australia is a challenge with trades, not as many people actually learning to become tradespeople anymore, and not as many people going through. So we're actually facing shortages of tradespeople. So normally the first question is that people go, the robots are going to steal my job. How's it being embraced so far? Is it because it's saving time? Is there a labour shortage as well over in the US that plastering is becoming a more of a bespoke trade?
Yeah, there's a big labor shortage here in the US as well. And it's actually all skilled tradespeople. So very similar to Australia. And Canvas, they actually did the approach where they reached out to the unions. So I know, with labor, a lot of people ask about unions and all that.
First thing.
Yeah, exactly. So Canvas actually, proactively reached out to the unions, and the unions were actually we were surprised at how happy they were to see a new type of machine. So I think they compared it to another type of tool that was invented and brought in. I can't remember exactly which one, but for drywall finishing. So the union members just see Canvas as another machine that they're going to learn how to operate, because you still need someone to operate it. So Canvas is actually augmenting a lot of the field crews rather than doing a full replacement. And I think, frankly, the construction site is so complex because there's so many things moving around and there's stuff everywhere. The environment is so complex that I don't think we're going to see full autonomous robotics for a while. And we may never want to do that because, we still want the folks out on site, checking the quality, making sure that everything's going okay. We're still going to have tradespeople out on site. So I really like the approach of, going direct to the unions first. And I think we're seeing the same trend even for rebar. So there have been a couple of rebar tying robots here in the US that the unions are just, they're happy because that just means a lot of their workforce can do more work actually with the new machines.
And it's reducing injury, isn't it? Because of RSI and all those sorts of loads that the tradespeople are placing on their bodies to, contort themselves to essentially do specific tasks. Now I'm moving on to a contentious one. And I call it contentious because I had an interesting debate on Facebook, I think, a little while ago about this. And it was on a tiny house page, and someone was getting really excited about 3D printed houses out of concrete. And I've just gone, do you understand how much energy is in that building and how much energy is required to build that thing? 3D printing, it's a catchphrase that's been used for a couple of years now. Everyone's trying to drive this whole concrete printing thing, which I think people don't realize that cement is actually a finite commodity in this world as well, and we're just mining this stuff and we're going to run out of it. But you've got a different approach with this one, and this is one that I actually do like the concept of, because it's actually not about printing a building. It's about using other kind of methods of actually using the technology for something that's possibly more useful. Do you want to talk to the listeners about branch technology and how that is slightly it is, but it isn't. It's not about printing buildings.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you on why this is a bit contentious, because we have spoken with and looked at a lot of concrete 3D printing companies. And, what it came down to is, at least for me, how I think of it is, it doesn't really make sense to ship, cement and other types of materials to sites and gantries. I don't know if it makes sense to ship gantries all over the place. And, we all know concrete is so unique depending on what region you're operating in, because it changes depending on humidity and, water supply and all that type of stuff. So we kind of stayed away from concrete 3D printing for all of those reasons. And now we see a lot of information about how bad concrete is for the environment. So we're really thankful that, Branch doesn't touch concrete at all. And we invested in Branch because they are taking advantage of 3D printing for exterior skin facades. And if you think about a lot of the really high-end, actually, you don't even need to be a high-end client, but if you think about all of the owners and architects out there that want to build a really unique looking building, they pick a really nice and fancy facade, but a lot of the times it's super expensive to have some unique shape, or, even if you want a really intricate art or whatever, the labor to create those really intricate facades is probably cost prohibitive for anyone to do something super unique and special. So Branch Technology is taking advantage of 3D printing so that architects and owners can basically design whatever type of facade system they want, and Branch can 3D print that. And they 3D print it inside their factory so that it's all in a controlled environment. They can make sure that the quality of these products are, top notch, meets all the requirements, and then they ship it out on site, broken down into prefabricated pieces. So they're kind of mixing 3D printing with prefabrication methods to offer this 3D printed, exterior facade panel that allows for people to kind of dream of whatever kind of exterior they want, and Branch can do it. One of my favorite projects that they worked on, I think, was a science center or a science museum, and the exterior skin was, I think, the surface of the moon was what they decided. And I was like, this is so cool. So I can't wait to see all of the upcoming buildings and what things people can dream of.
But that's the positive, isn't it, in terms of facadism? And it's something that I've got a nice book on iconic buildings and how buildings make a difference. If a building's designed as an iconic building, it can then draw tourism and the like, and the importance of that. But the problem is that all these projects are governed by capital expenditure, and they don't have an infinite budget to deliver these projects. But then to have the access to this technology, but essentially, we're just manufacturing each panel, which is kind of a similar thing to what needs to be done anyway if you're just using other panelized systems. It'd be interesting to know the cost differential, but we won't go into that today because I'm assuming it's not something you can just go, it's definitely this price, because each panel being custom has different construction times, which takes longer to do. But I like that approach, that it's more about design for manufacture and assembly as a kit of parts, rather than, let's just shove a big concrete nozzle here and just pour away. It doesn't, it's not my fan with all those sorts of things. So we move on to a third investment today that Brick and Mortar Ventures has made out of the myriad of investments that you've made. There's obviously too many to discuss in one sitting, but I'm hoping that what this conversation does is it opens up people's eyes to the fact that technology can make a difference, and then people start to believe in actually using technology to make their lives easier. Or if they have a great idea, that they start reaching out to you. But here in Australia, we have, and it's probably similar with major storm events and the like that you have in the US. Now we have major cyclones, major floods that go through. And I remember reading a news article the other day talking about someone had a claim from a cyclone here, which is a hurricane in North America, 2 years ago, and the house still isn't fixed. That would be due to a myriad of reasons. It could be because the insurance company doesn't have time to get out there, which they probably have gotten out there, but supply of trades probably would be the real issue. But every step in the process for property assessments takes a long period of time. It's kind of like get through this gate, get through that gate, get through the next. Now, I wanted to talk to you about Hosta AI, remote property assessments, and the work that they're doing in terms of trying to assist on that side. So we've kind of covered off on how things can work with construction, how we can save things in construction. Now let's talk about the more front-end stuff, about before they even get on site, with this product and solution. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Hosta is actually one of our more recent investments, but we've known the team for a while now. One of the founders was a architect that ended up getting her PhD in computer vision, artificial intelligence, and the other co-founder has a really strong business and operations background. They came together, started Hosta, and the first use case that they're going after is actually working with insurance companies to do appraisals and assessments of existing conditions, if you want to call it that. So whether it's, a large insurance company that's insuring a warehouse, Hosta can help make sure that, the sprinkler heads are adequately spaced apart, or there's, the right type of railing at certain height or whatnot. They're also working with insurance companies to understand damage. So as you mentioned, so they can know what is the approximate square footage of the damage that needs sheetrock replacement or something like that. So the technology that Hosta has is a technology where you can basically turn a 2D photo into a BIM and BOM. So building information model and bill of materials. And they do that through kind of creating a 3D spatial grid from a 2D photo, from understanding, angles and all that. And they're automatically creating floor plans and stuff like that from the photos that you take. So their whole goal was, we want to use the device that most people have, which is a smartphone, which is why they built their technology around, just cameras on a smartphone, so they can take that 2D photo and turn it into whatever you need. So what that means for the, I guess, greater AEC market is they're going to be this reality capture tool that can make measurements, create floor plans, create 3D models. They can understand locations and they can understand materials as well. So they've kind of built in this overall architecture of, all their objects in a way that an architect would think about it. So which is why they're able to create Revit files with, windows, knowing that windows need to be within a door, and they can kind of tag the specific types of materials to whatever they see in the photo.
I don't even want to know how hard that was to do.
It was really hard because we've talked to so many reality capture companies and, point cloud data, 360 photo data, people trying to do stuff with 2D photos, some with, color point clouds with, and they're all semi-automated, right? Hosta is the first one that we've seen is truly automated, though their accuracy is probably 95% today.
Yep.
It's not, valid for, as building just yet. But as they continue to train their algorithms, we're confident that they can get pretty accurate.
That's scary, isn't it? So then a site foreman at the end of progressively through the project, and this is something that's really interesting. So obviously that's an insurance angle, but I know that site foremen take progress shots every day on site when they're during construction. Imagine a situation whereby and obviously we're talking about the future here, but by that site foreman's photo diary, essentially, that he has over a 6-12 month construction period where he's taking photos of various things that are going on, it could potentially paint a picture of an as-built without any other verification required.
That's on the roadmap. So that is definitely going to be the future. And that's one of the reasons why we are so excited and why we invested is, I have firsthand experience of how painful as-builting is. And it's, a lot of paper going out on site, pulling tape and, trying to bring it back into the model. If you're using a model or even marking up a 2D plan, that's still pretty annoying. And Hosta is tackling this pain point that really no one wants to do. Like, I'm sure no site foreman wants to go out and actually mark up, this piece of ductwork was installed today. So yeah, we think with Hosta, it could just be, a ton of photos, potentially even videos, like video walkthroughs. They can track progress. They can update the as-builts. Of course, this is in the future, but I don't think it's that far in the distant future.
No, well, where do I sign up to invest? The problem is that I know how, like, the tool in its current concept obviously brings a lot of value to the insurance market, but if it does get to that accuracy to a point where it's to a high enough level to then capture from photos throughout the life of the construction and being able to disseminate what's real and what's changed in that'd be pretty spectacular. I'm kind of in a world of excitement at the end of our conversation today because of that. I'm glad I left that one to the end, because I think that, to me, apart from the myriad of other issues that we have the biggest challenge that we have when it comes to handover is everyone saying, well, I need to go and use Kelly Cohn's laser scanners and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to capture this information when the level of accuracy isn't necessarily as high as what it should be. At the end of the day, you want to have a reasonably strong accuracy across the built asset to then verify it against your design model to go, well, it's generally right. And that's really the accuracy most people need, unless they're going to do really detailed outcomes. But to me, that's blown my mind for the end of the conversation. So I'm hoping that everyone else has been excited by those technologies that Brick and Mortar Venture are backing, and there's probably a few other companies that are out there that are similar to you. Now we've talked about the current, and you did touch on the future with Hosta, and I'm very excited now. But throughout our career, we have seen a substantial change in the way in which technology is implemented. Now, yes, as you've said, construction sites are very slow to adapt, and we also have people in construction sites and designers that are all just going, oh, I'm happy doing it this way, I've always done it this way. But technology has moved on at a rate of knots, and if we look at that lovely scale of how technology has changed, it's an exponential curve. So as someone that's on the forefront in terms of seeing, every day having someone knock on your door essentially saying, your inbox, I could be scared to see how full it would get every day from people putting options and saying, look, this is my new technology for you to consider, come on, please back me. With all of that knowledge that you have of what you've investigated to date and knowing what kind of could be around the corner, where do you see the state of industry in the next, say, 5 or 10 years' time and potential technologies?
Well, for sure, the famous McKinsey graph of productivity in construction being stagnant. I mean, I would hope that that's no longer the case, right? Especially with a lot of the new tools and robotics coming into the space. I mean, I think I'm most excited about the new hardware and the physical things that can, make our workers a lot more safe as well as more productive. And of course, there's going to be a lot of the digital tools that are making collaboration a lot easier. So I do have a hunch that, especially with the pandemic and people working remotely, I think the industry is going to adopt, at least a little more flexibility with, global workforce and stuff like that. I would like for us to do less on the model authoring and more on the design, because I know there's a lot of admin stuff that goes into the documentation. So, I think we are going to see that with some of the automation and a lot of the admin tasks that architects and engineers do. So the goal is, in the next 5 to 10 years, we have more machines on site, more collaboration. There's definitely going to be less workers out on site. For sure, there's already a ton of, increased prefab, DFMA, and all that. But at the end of the day, I think construction should be less risky. That's the end goal, is that it's more safe, less risky. Everything else is a plus, but yeah, I'm excited to see less workers out on site, not because I don't want them there. It's because we have a labor shortage and there aren't enough people coming into the construction industry, whether it is the skilled trades or architecture, engineering, and construction. I think, even on the office side of things, there's still not enough people joining the industry. So it's an overall shortage all around. And, owners are only going to get pickier and we're only going to build more. So we do need to automate a lot of those admin processes, and hopefully the fees don't continue to go down. But we are more efficient in the way that we manage these jobs.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and it's only going to get harder because everyone wants more and more, and we've got to do more with less and all of those other issues that we have to deal with. But Alice, thank you very much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it. From, San Francisco, Silicon Valley land. But one final question for you. It's the one question I ask every one of my guests, and I'm looking forward to seeing the technology futurist side in you. And what does BIM mean to you?
Yeah, so BIM to me is more about the information, and it's the linking of information and being able to get the right information at the right time when you need it. So that was my, when I first joined the construction industry, I fell in love with building things virtually and then building it in real life to find all the problems. But as I, progressed in my career, I realized that not everyone saw the world that way. So if we were to dumb it down and make it kind of the lowest common denominator, like the information and the data is what we need, whether or not it's 3D, 4D, 5D, whatever it is, as long as you can link all of that information in a place that people can access and understand, that would be a winning world for me. So probably a different definition now that I'm, more progressed in my career. But yeah, the information is the key part of BIM for me.
I think that all of us learn each week something new, and it changes our view on what the meaning is. So, we could have a conversation in another 2 years' time and your view might have changed again because we realise that we don't know enough the more we know. So I think it's a pertinent kind of angle that you take with the information side of it. And it's the whole reason behind why technology is in place to enable better communication and information transfer. So that's really what it's all about. But thanks once again for your time today, Alice. Now, for more information on Alice and Brick and Mortar Ventures, please head over to the podcast section of the Skewed website for further reading. I look forward to sharing our next podcast with you in a fortnight's time. Until then, good luck with your digital transition. Digital transition.